Hi, my name is Marja Gaynor and I come from Finland, but I've been living in Cork, south of Ireland, for many, many years. And I play the Baroque violin and also the Baroque viola. And I've been playing at the Ardee Baroque Festival for many, many years, both with Irish Baroque Orchestra and Camerata Kilkenny, and I think with some other groups as well, um, on violin or viola, whatever has been needed. Or I remember in the olden times when we had some workshops going, I remember giving workshops to the kids in the library, but that's many moons ago now. But I always think Ardee Baroque Festival is a really fantastic festival and great audience. So hopefully I'll get a chance to do another workshop maybe in the future without COVID in person. But today I'll tell a little bit more about the Baroque violin and how I play it and why I play it and what do I play on it. And I was thinking I'd start with just talking about the differences between my modern violin and my Baroque violin. So this beauty is my normal modern violin. Now I'm not sure if the light here is terribly good, but you might be able to see all the obvious differences. So this is the Baroque, this is the modern. So as you can see, probably the most obvious difference is that on the modern violin I've got a chin rest. On the Baroque violin, no chin rest. If I turn them around, my modern violin has a shoulder rest. My Baroque fiddle has a little crab. I'm cheating a little bit. Shoulder rests and chin rests weren't invented until much, much later. But just for a little bit more of a grip, I've got a little crabby on the other side. Now you might notice the difference in the strings. I don't know how pixelated the picture is, but on my modern violin I've got strings made out of metal or steel or something synthetic anyways, whereas on the Baroque violin they are much thicker, much lighter, and they are made of gut. And if you like, you can take a guess in your head what animal gave his or her guts for my Baroque violin. I'll give you a minute to think about it. And if you guessed sheep, you were right. My strings are made of sheep gut. So not suitable for vegans. This is how strings were made for quite a long time. Actually, it's not just a Baroque thing, curiously. If you had great-grandparent maybe who used to play the violin, they would have, more likely than not, they would have had at least the top two strings made of gut. It's only, curious enough, only after World War II that metal strings, synthetic strings, became the norm. So it's a very recent thing. Now the gut strings, they can be a little bit annoying. They can go very easily out of tune. They can squeak exactly when you want them to sound really beautiful. But they give a lovely mellow sound. Now normally when I play my Baroque violin, I also tune it a semitone lower. So when I play my A, it actually would sound A flat if you were used to modern pitch. But today I have tuned my Baroque violin into normal concert pitch, 440, just in case you want to learn some tunes with me. So it shouldn't sound too odd. But they do give a mellow, nice sound, and it gives an awful lot of color. I can demonstrate a little bit. You all know how modern violin sounds, but I'll just play my strings. It's quite powerful, right? So if I play my strings on the Baroque violin, it's not as loud, but it does have a lot of depth. It's got a lot of gentleness. Nice palette of color. I can also go really quiet. Where we've got the movement drops. So if I play the raindrops on my gut strings, it really sounds like little pitter-patter raindrops. What else? So this is my Baroque bow. It's light and nice and nifty. I know a good few traditional Irish violinists who actually use a Baroque bow. I think there's something about the lightness and the feel to it that lends itself nicely to Irish trad. Just to compare, you probably know already what a modern bow looks like, but here you see it. So the shape of the modern bow goes with what kind of sound we want to make on the modern violin, which is strong and equal and smooth. So I can make a nice equal smooth sound from the heel to the tip, whereas on the Baroque violin the frog, the heel of it is the strong point, and then as you can see gets really light towards the tip. And it's very good for the Baroque music and getting that kind of feeling of light and shade and strong and weak, but I'll talk more about that later. Just in case you're curious, how did the bow evolve? I've got the middle version here in my case. This is a classical bow. So between this and the modern one we get this guy. So this bow would have been used in the Haydn, Mozart, kind of late 18th century classical period. So it's still lighter than my modern bow, but a good bit heavier than the Baroque bow. And then for romantic music, modern music, we get into the full-on normal bow. Right, I'm gonna grab my Baroque bow and my Baroque fiddle, and I will play some music in a minute, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what the Baroque violins played, and where did they play, and why. Baroque period is from about 1600 to 1750 in music, roughly speaking. And what was happening in music? Lots and lots of exciting things. I'd say classical music, kind of as we know it, was born then. All the famous guys were around in the Baroque period: Vivaldi, Bach, Handel. So a lot of the music that is still very, very famous was composed in this period. Baroque period saw the birth of opera, and a lot of music was played for opera and theatre. Many musicians were employed by the church to play music for religious services. And then you might have been employed in the orchestra of somebody rich, a king or a queen or duke or duchess or anybody with money who wanted music, because of course we didn't have Spotify for sure 300 years ago. So if you wanted to listen to music, you had to either play yourself or you had to pay somebody else to play for you. And if you were a violinist, you were quite likely to also play other instruments. You might have also been a composer who also played the violin and many other instruments. So people were quite versatile really as musicians. And it also was considered for wealthy, educated people to be part of your education, that you might maybe played a little bit of lute or flute, or you composed, or you played keyboard. So, and everybody could dance. And this is one thing that was common for a little bit more kind of village fiddler, traveling fiddle, country fair type, but also for the violin players that played for the court or any rich person. Everybody played dance music, music for dancing, and everybody knew how to play. And I think this is a nice link to traditional music, because so much of traditional music is also music for dancing. And an awful lot of the Baroque repertoire is for dancing or based on the forms of dance music. And this is where my Baroque bow comes in really handy, because it's perfect for creating the rhythm and the beat and the feel for dancing. So I was thinking I'll start my playing today with playing a very famous piece by J.S. Bach. And if any of you have played even a small bit of classical violin, maybe you might have had a few Suzuki lessons. This is in the first Suzuki book. It's called Minuet number 3. I'm going to play it really slow, just in case you want to learn it. It goes like this. So Minuet was a very, very popular dance in the Baroque time. So in order to play music well for dancing, we need good rhythm, and for this kind of dance we need to help the dancers to put their steps and their curtsies and their light steps and their heavy steps into place. And this is a very typical feature of Baroque music. If I just play it without any phrasing, without any light and strong, if I just play it straight with equal weight on every note, it doesn't sound quite as nice. I'm gonna do it a little bit faster, but without any gesture, so it would sound... I'm still playing all the right notes, right? But it doesn't sound as light. So now I'm gonna try put my weight on the first beat, which is when the dancers take their step, and I'm gonna make, so this piece is in 3/4 time. So I'm gonna make a strong first beat and light second beat and light third beat. And you'll see me doing lots of light up bows, and you'll see me do strong down bows, and sometimes I retake my bow to be on a down bow, so I get a nice strong down beat. I'm gonna play the whole piece through now, and I'm gonna do my best to make it nice and light and dancey and elegant, like a proper courtly minuet. So that's the Bach minuet. And continuing on our dance theme. Now, I'm not a traditional music expert, but I did used to play with Finnish folk dance groups in Finland when I was a student. And I used to go to Irish sessions in Finland and a little bit in Cork when I was young. And I had time to do nice things, like play a little bit of that. And in sessions we play, what do we play? We play jigs and reels, mainly reels. At least in my youth it was mainly reels. But jig is also really popular. And jig has been around for a very long time. And if I would play an Irish jig, what would be a nice jig? Don't laugh at me, I'll try a little bit. Whoops. Something like that, yes. So it's really nice and very dancey and rhythmical. So I thought I'd, just as a comparison, play a jig from Baroque time. This is a movement from a sonata by Corelli, who was an Italian composer. This is written around 1700. It's from his famous collection of sonatas that was copied all over Europe. It was a real trend to play Corelli's music. And this jig is quite gentle. When I played that little bit of a jig there, I'm using separate bows, which I think most of the time we would do if we played a traditional jig. Corelli has given us lots of slurs. This jig starts like this. But he's given us little slurs of 3 notes per bow, which makes it very gentle and elegant. I nearly think this jig sounds a little bit Christmassy. So I'll play the jig for you in a second. But before that, I want to talk about phrasing in Baroque music. Apart from the hierarchy of the bar and the heavy and the light, which helps the dance feeling, there's also a little bit more to it. If you think of Baroque architecture and art, it's quite dramatic. Before that we had Renaissance palaces and buildings which were quite harmonious. It was all about balance and, you know, matching lines and things. And also the period after Baroque is classical, symmetry, beauty, all that. Whereas Baroque, the music as well as the architecture and the art is all about drama. It's about light and shade, and it's a bit of a more is more world. It's not less is more, let's be refined, let's be elegant. It's, you know, there's a lot of excitement in Baroque. And I find as a Baroque musician, you want to have the audience on the edge of their seat. You don't want people sitting back and going, this is lovely, this is really pretty, I might have a little snooze. No, you want the audience to be, oh my God, what's happening next? That's so amazing, that's brilliant. And also, when I play with big symphony orchestras, which is wonderful, of course, but it's like you're one of 16 other violins, and it's a bit like you're singing with the big choir. Whereas if you play with the little Baroque group, or duo, trio, little chamber group, or Baroque orchestra, everybody's really important. And making the music in a Baroque orchestra or group is more like having an intelligent, clever chat with your friends rather than singing with a large group of friends, which is really wonderful also, of course. So what I'm going to try to do with this gentle, lovely jig is I'm going to inject lots and lots of shape into it. And Baroque composers liked writing in loud and soft. F for forte, P for piano, so that you could show some contrast, but also they left a lot up for the performer as well, so you were expected to, I don't know, make a lot happen in the piece. So I'm gonna try and play this jig for you. It's not very long, but I'll try to make it exciting if I can. Thank you for listening. This one could do with the bass player or a harpsichordist or guitarist under it. Oh, by the way, which makes me think, there's one other aspect where I really like playing Baroque music, because I also play with bands and things like that. And the earlier you go in the repertoire, the more you have to be creative, like you're working in a band, because you get a piece of music. It's very simple. There might just be the melody and the bass line, and you just use what you have. You might say, okay, I have a friend who plays the guitar, let's do this piece with fiddle and guitar. Or you might say, oh yeah, so-and-so plays the double bass, let's invite them in to join this piece. Or, oh yeah, we can also have a cello, okay, let's add harpsichord or whatever is in the house. And then you decide, okay, let's do it 4 times, maybe first time just the guitar, this time we add this, and then we improvise a little bit, and let's just see how it goes. You know, so there's that element of freedom and creativity that I really like. And people were expected, especially if you were a working musician in the Baroque time, to be able to improvise. This is also one thing that really drew me into the Baroque style, because I always liked improvising and making stuff up. Actually, when I first started playing the Baroque violin, I thought that it's this wonderful, brilliant thing where people just improvise mad. It's not quite like that either. You need to know some basic rules, but you can have a lot of fun with it. And there's lots of music that is more or less written out improvisation. I thought that the last piece I'd introduce would be a little bit in this category that's like Packable Canon, a ground bass piece where we've got basic bass line, or chords that keep repeating, and then the melody on top gets lots and lots of fancy variations. And this is something that singer-songwriters would still do these days. You just pick chords that you like, and then you just put stuff on top of it. And this piece is called Tollet's Ground. It's from a collection called Division Violin. I think it's from the 1680s, 1683. And this book called Division Violin was aimed at gentleman amateur violinists who just wanted to do exactly that. Get their fiddle out, play some tunes with their gentleman friends, or maybe lady friends also. It always gives a melody, lots and lots of different variations, some harder, some easier, and then it gives the bass line, usually just 4 bars or 2 bars or 8 bars long. So then you just do whatever you want. You invite your friends over, get them to improvise on the chords. So if I wanted to, I could get one of my kids to play my auto harp or the piano in the house, and I would get them to do... Gut strings are out of tune already. F major chords, C major chords, B flat major chords. It's a bit of a one-trick wonder. So Thomas Tollet, if I remember right, was an Irish composer who worked in London. So this lovely ground-based piece by his made its way into this Division Violin book. Just show you how it looks. This collection is on IMSLP, by the way. Anybody can print it for free. There's lots and lots of lovely folk tunes, most of them, that these composers have written out in these variation styles. Before I play it, I want to talk about ornamentation, because part of what you were expected to do as a Baroque musician was to be able to decorate the piece. And you're probably, if you play traditional fiddle, you're probably already amazing at it. You can play your tune, and every time you play it, it's not the same, because you might add some... I can't remember all the different names of the different ornaments. I kind of know how to play some of them. As far as I know, oftentimes the trad ornaments are done with like your third finger if you're playing your first finger. Or if you want to do this kind of rolly thingy, whatever it's called. In Baroque music, we wouldn't really do that. Instead, we do an awful lot of trills. And the trill always starts from the note right next to the note you're decorating. So if I want to do an ornament on my, let's say my B, my first finger on my A string, instead of going, snapping it with my third finger, I'm going to go put my second finger down and trill with that finger. If it's a very slow, beautiful piece, I might do an outrageously long trill. Or if it's fast, whatever I have time for. Another type of ornament is called mordant, which means that I play the note and then I do the note below it, but very quick. Or if it's on the B. Or if it's on the D, for instance. So I'm gonna play the melody of the Tollet's Ground once very slow with no ornaments, just in case anybody would like to learn it. It's in F major. If you can imagine the chords underneath it. I'll just tune the fiddle. Whoopsie daisy. So the chords would go... So you'll have to imagine that underneath. And the melody goes... Okay, that's our basic melody. So now I'm going to put my trills and my little mordants into the melody. So that's one thing I could do with it. It should never sound the same 2 times in a row. That's what I think anyways. Should keep it fresh and exciting. Another thing that is quite an easy form of improvising or decorating is if there's gaps between notes, you can just throw some notes in between. For instance, between my and my, I could go something like that. I'll try one more trilly version. Something like that. Simple enough, but gives it a little bit of life. So before I say thank you and goodbye, I'll do this toilet squad one more time, and I'll just show you a couple of the variations, which is really just improvising on these very simple chords. On the page there's 22 variations, but I'll do just 3. Okay? So nobody will fall asleep.